Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright, speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapington. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show, while Jeremy and I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist, as there really is a lot of news and information to get to before we may fully indulge you with your in-flight entertainment. Well, folks, if you've been watching the latest media cycles, you'll notice that the presumptive GOP nominee, Donald J. Trump, also known as John Barron, also known as John Miller, has been stirring up quite a bit of problems with respect to this fraud case that is going against him in California in front of the federal district judge, Judge Curiel. And what's so amazing about all of this is that Trump has essentially come out and said that Curiel is A, Mexican, B, also because of that, he is incapable of ruling impartially over a case. Now, some of the followers of Trump, the Lion Trumpidians, have pointed out, and I will give them credit here for being right, that he was a part of this organization known as the La Raza Lawyers Association, which is not directly affiliated with La Raza Unida, but they are still kind of these radical pro-Latino organizations within the law, helping people of that persuasion get legal positions and get into law school and what have you. Now, however, there's an interesting aspect to that which has not been covered by the Lion Branch Trumpidians, which is, of course, the big mouthpiece for the Trumpsters on Fox News Channel's The Five. Kimberly Guilfoyle is also a member of that organization. But anyway, going back to this whole notion that the embarrassment that's coming forth from Donald J. Trump and his handling of this issue with respect to the handling of his case by Judge Curiel is not going over well. It's going over like a lead balloon because of the manner in which he chose to speak about it. Instead of pointing to direct evidence, and instead of using his lawyers to file a motion to state that they wanted a different judge or they wished to change venue because they could not receive a fair trial under Judge Curiel or within the confines of his court, then he decided it was more important to go to the media, to the court of public opinion. In other words, I think this is another distraction, another attempt by Trump to push the envelope, to be vulgarian instead of using the rule of law. So what this issue really boils down to is not a question of race, as so many in the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media would like to have us believe. That's certainly the narrative that they're pushing, but it actually comes down to an issue of the rule of law. There's one thing that we have oft-times reiterated on past episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and that's that with respect to Trump, we are having to deal with an attempt to ignore the rule of law, an attempt to carve out a special niche for himself. In other words, do as I say, not as I do. And when all of those who are pushing for a tyranny of false unity continue to come out and try and say that we need to support Trump because he is better than Hillary, he is the lesser of two evils, they can't really explain how he's any different than Hillary with respect to believing that the law doesn't apply to him, with this elitist mentality that seems to ooze from every pore in his body. And the reason that they can't do that is there really is no difference between them. That's why I'd prefer to call that doctrine the lesser of two weasels. Take, for instance, as a form of analogy here, that we have a henhouse that needs protecting, and there are two candidates for employment to protect that henhouse. They happen to be two weasels. Would the lesser of two weasels still not eat the chicken just as much as the greater of two weasels? A weasel is a weasel, after all, and that is really the way that we have to look at this narrative. That narrative of voting for someone because they are not the presumptive Democrat or whatever other party, that is what has led us to this death spiral that we've been experiencing. And it's only going to get worse, and it's only going to accelerate unless we break this cycle that has proven not to work. After all, is it not the definition of insanity to repeatedly do the same thing with the expectation of a different outcome? Well, then, we are at the point now where our electoral cycle and process is going to the brink of insanity. So, let's not choose the lesser of two weasels. Let's actually just defend what is rightfully ours, stand up to these people, and say no as they so rightfully deserve to be told no.
Randy, I just want to say that it's been a while since we've actually been able to do a show with conflicting schedules and this or that, but rest assured, folks, we have been paying an awful lot of attention to what's going on. And when you talk about going to the court of public opinion, see, this is no different. What Trump has done with his embarrassing charades is no different than what Black Lives Matter has done, no different than what the movement with Trayvon Martin, with Michael Brown, Eric Garner, so on and so forth. It's no different. They create this scenario to where the public weighs in so that there's no place, because by the time, even if he was to file a motion for a change of venue or for a different judge, so on and so forth, in order to get a fair trial, it's not going to happen. And I think that's done on purpose. But of course, all of this, with him attacking Judge Curiel, is no less of any embarrassment of everything else he's done in his campaign. I mean, one only has to look at the things that he's done when stating that he can walk out in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot somebody, and people will still vote for him. It's really no different. The attack that he did with Heidi Cruz, no different. It's all part of the same propagandistic scheme that he's been deploying throughout his whole entire campaign. And what people need to realize, Randy, you and I, we've been warning about this.
Yes,
for 11 months. We have been warning about this. We told everybody this was going to happen. We told everybody that he's going to disrupt the elections. He's going to behave in a Fabianistic way. The media is going to turn on him. Whether some people in the media support him, which many do, but you're starting to see them back away from him. And that's all done by design. He wants to create all these problems to the forefront. Like you said, it's smoke and mirrors, and it's another distraction. Why? Well, I think what it is, it's the whole, what's that scheme I'm thinking of, pool hustlers use. I can't think of it, but it's like little brother scheme or something of that nature. To where him and Hillary are both working in cahoots, and one of them is running interference, while the other one is sneaking in. Well, it's two weasels applying for the same position. One's running interference so that the employer, we the people, will say, oh, well, this is, everybody's distracted by Trump. Meanwhile, Hillary's just ramping up and working behind the scenes, being patient, like she always has, to where she's just going to slip right in.
And of course, we've always asked whether that was his intention from the beginning.
Sure.
And it's certainly the great weight of the evidence would suggest that it is, because of the bombastic way that he goes forth, the way that he has always espoused for the vast majority of his 70 years on this earth, these ideologies that are diametrically opposed to what is in the best interest of the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, we the people. And of course, he has this track record of lying. That's the other thing that we have warned about time and time again. And of course, I'm sure you recall, Jeremy, and I'm sure that the vast majority of our cherished listening passengers and audience members remember as well, that one of the things that they pushed for in order to support Trump is that he will hire the best people. And sure, he may hire and surround himself with the best people, but there was this leaked conference call in which he was telling people to go out and to label all of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media as racist, and to attack anyone who would dare question him on his handling of the Curiel matter. And it was against the advice of Jan Brewer. It was against the advice of Newt Gingrich. It was against the advice of Jeff Sessions. And so we see that it doesn't matter how good the people are that you surround yourself with if you're not going to take advice at all. He's trying to run this as a one-man show. And believe me, I think that's also great insight into how he would try to run this country. He wouldn't go by the limitations placed by the Constitution. After all, back in 2012, he said that he found no value in the Constitution, and that's why he's never read it cover to cover. And so if he is already doing that, already trying to turn this into a one-man freak show, it's not boding well for the looming November general election. And we have to be cognizant of that fact. And of course, it's going to come across as sour grapes with respect to the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. They're yucking this up. They're seeing this as the perfect opportunity to crucify the conservative movement along with Trump himself. And remember, that was another thing that we've been warning about. Do not just embrace Trump, because they are going to try and make a stereotype out of this with respect to all of the conservative movement. They're going to try and say that we can't get away from this. And I saw that on one of the comments sections to one of these articles about Trump's handling of the Curiel matter. This is not going to go away, folks. This is playing directly into the hands of the Fabian socialist-controlled, salivating mainstream media. Just as we said it would. They sense the blood's in the water. They're turning the dagger in the back of the New York billionaire, businessman, real estate tycoon, and all-around vulgarian. And it is our own fault for allowing him to even come near the status of nominee for the gutless opposition party, or GOP. That shows that we are even sicker than we thought we were coming into this. Because if you stop and think about it for a moment, folks, this was our election cycle to win, and we blew it.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing. You know, he wants to surround himself. He says, I choose the best people. Well, the best people for whom? Who are they going to benefit? Surely not we the people. The best choices that he makes are the ones that have always benefited whom? Trump.
Himself.
Why? Because he doesn't care about anybody other than himself. And, you know, like you said, this was our election to win, and we blew it. Why? Because that old adage, in the actual clinical definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Well, it's kind of like now when they say, well, you have to vote for Trump, he's the only one, you know, he's going to save us. That's like the individuals that have been declared mentally incompetent or insane by a rule of law in the courts, giving the advice of trying to make people better. It's the patients running the asylum is what it has come down to. So really, who's the sick and twisted individual here? Yes, Trump is a devious individual. Yes, he's sick and twisted. Why? Because his ideas are rooted like just these mangroves of a quaff that's out of control in Fabianistic ideas and Fabianism. But when he implements it, all he has to do is step back. That's what Fabians do. They step back. They get the ball rolling, then they step back and they let everybody else do the work for them. And it gives the perception that it's the people that are stumping for him, they become the lunatics. They become the ones that take the fall. They're the pawns. Meanwhile, he sits fat and happy and has plausible deniability about anything going on because he keeps trying to cover himself over and over. This is what Goebbels is talking about with instituting propaganda, making it boomerang proof. Well, Trump failed with that regard because we're here.
Well, and I think he didn't even care for it to be boomerang proof because, as you mentioned at the opening, it's that this idea is he's there to promote Hillary. He's there
Yeah.
to help his good buddy. That's what it's been about this whole entire time, and that's what he's going to double down on. And that makes sense because he has never really once held a conservative position in his entire life. That's why he's even admitted in front of the cameras of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the Salivating Mainstream Media that it's the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party.
Sure.
Why would he say that? Why would he say that? He would say that because he doesn't really believe in conservatism. He doesn't believe in what he's claiming. And that is another reason we simply cannot trust him. He is the mafioso quafioso. He is building his entire campaign on a Waffle House built in the syrup of deceit.
Absolutely. And again, we have to point to the fact that he's an habitual liar. You know,
He's pathological.
yeah, he's sociopathic is what he is because he doesn't care about anybody or anything other than himself and everything that belongs to him. And here's the thing. It was like, what was a couple of days ago at a press conference or a rally, he said, look at my African American over there.
Yeah, I think that was almost a week ago. Not quite a full week.
Yeah, so now he's actually claiming that, that's mine, showing possession of another person.
He's got a quota now. He's got a quota now.
So he says, well, I'm not a racist and everybody's blowing it out of proportion. When you say things like my African American, a lot of people say, well, it's a guffaw, it's a gaffe, people, it's a Freudian slip, whatever, try to excuse it away.
A lot of them.
Well, here's the thing. Anybody that has a bigly brain like him, supposedly,
Allegedly.
they understand the concept of thinking before you speak. Okay? You don't just say something and then expect everything. But see, this is the problem with Trump. He thinks he can say whatever he wants to say and not be held accountable for it. Just like he thinks he can do whatever he wants to do and the law doesn't apply to him. He thinks nothing applies to him except what he says.
Yeah, that's just like a Fabian socialist. That's
Absolutely.
why we see all of these efforts to get rid of holding people accountable for their actions. And Donald J. Trump is as guilty of this as any other Fabian. And another reason that he would go out there and just try and say the most offensive thing, the most outlandish, crazy thing that he could, is that is how he has been garnering the type of free media attention that he has been.
Mm-hmm.
But that is going to backfire. The reason that's going to backfire is the media is already making their narrative about him. And sure, the Lion Trumpidians are there trying to say that anybody who says anything against Trump, that just galvanizes his supporters. That's fine. You can galvanize the inbred Trumpidians, but what is it going to do for the rest of America who has a more of a modicum of sense and sanity than the most hardline Lion Trumpidians? And of course, these attacks on Judge Curiel has even drawn Newt Gingrich, a big government fan himself, to claim that it was an absurd amateur mistake, that it was the stupidest thing Trump could have done. Well, hello, Newt. We've been saying this for how long?
Yeah,
10 months or so.
You're kind of late to the party there, Newt.
Well,
just
of course
a little
he
bit.
is.
But
Of
of
course
course,
he is.
I mean, let's look at all of these individuals that are now coming out of the woodwork and turning their backs on Trump. They're all late to the party. We've been saying this over and over and over. Again, we have issued warnings. We have told people this is going to happen. Nobody ever wants to listen. Now, I don't know, Randy, if it's because of our age, which I would consider us to be grown adults, grown men, capable of logic and reasonable and rational thought, wouldn't you?
Of course.
So, individuals that are older than us seem to think that, well, because they're older than us, we don't know what we're talking about. Because, well, I've been involved in politics for this number of years. Blah. I don't care. I really don't care. I don't care if you polish the penny loafers and patent leather shoes of Martin Van Buren with his own mutton chops. I don't care. The fact of the matter is, when people are wrong and they try to uphold their stance no matter what it takes, no matter what it costs them, even abandoning their principles and casting everything that they held true and dear and near to them and their families to the wayside, just to continue keeping up this charade. Again, there's definitely a sickness, and I think you actually had a little bit of that a couple of months ago.
Well,
I think
the
think
flu?
that I think it's a little bit worse than the flu. I mean, maybe Ebola wrapped up in, I don't know, the scarlet fever.
Let's not insult scarlet fever.
Or Ebola, but
Yeah. When it comes to Trump, the other thing is, this is unprecedented, at least in living memory. We have not had anyone attempt to take over the party in the fashion that Trump has. And Trump represents the worst of our system of polity. There is not a lie he hasn't met that he doesn't like. And that's the problem. We need to get back to truth. We need to get back to a modicum of sanity, and that is going to require that we, the people, the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this once thriving, flourishing, and even vibrant representative republic of ours, to become more responsible. Because as the great visionary Zygmunt Dobbs warned in his magnus opus, Keynes at Harvard, these Fabian socialists are going to attempt to overwhelm the system, much like the Cloward-Piven principle. And that's the thing. That's what Trump's doing. He is going in, becoming the presumptive nominee of the Gutless Opposition Party, or GOP, and then he is going and pushing the envelope as far as he can to try and satisfy and fulfill and come to fruition all of these two-dimensional caricatures that the left attempts to pigeonhole the right with to make them stick. And he's doing that to overwhelm it, so that then it will crawl to the left and beg for relief. And that's the same thing as Cloward-Piven. And so we see that they play it out much on the same rules from their Bible as the rules for radicals by that moron Saul Alinsky. And it progressively pushes the country further and further to the left. That's the danger of this incrementalization that we're facing. And this is what Trump is thriving off of. He's not pushing this country to the right. He's not trying to unify the base of the gutless opposition party. He's trying to be divisive. He's trying to be disingenuous. He's trying to be hateful and bigoted. That is where we are right now. And it is not helping us. It is going to, if we're not careful, irreparably harm movement conservatives everywhere as we get tied in with his shenanigans. Well, it's got to stop, and we have to put a stop to it, and that means that the Never Trump movement must remain galvanized. We must never bow down, never give up, never surrender, and never capitulate to the twisted machinations of the Quaff-in-Chief. I don't want the Quaff-in-Chief to be the commander-in-chief. He is not capable of it. He does not have the strength of character for it. He lacks the character and fitness to be my representative.
Sure. And it's this is why we have come up with constitutional compositionists, because see, that term, that label right there, and see, folks, this is what's going on. We've spoken about this. In order to defeat individuals that are melded within the Fabian society, you have to use their own tactics and techniques against them. You have to fight fire with fire. We've spoke about this. Now, here's the thing. The difference is that they've hijacked and bastardized certain terminology. Liberal. Gay. So all these different things, and then what they do is when they're done using them, they turn right back around and say, well, you can't use those anymore because that doesn't represent us, and we don't identify with that, and that's offensive, this and that. Well, here's the thing. Here's a term that you cannot hijack and twist and bastardize because it just won't work. Constitutional compositionist. I would love to see some kind of Fabian twist that and turn it around and try to hijack it. I dare them. And I would also like to say that the Never Trump movement, which you and I are both avidly a part of, I think we need to grow it. We need to grow our constitutional compositionist movement with the Never Trump movement.
And that's exactly what we're doing. It is growing. And
Yes.
Trump is going to push more and more people into it. Even Paul Ryan, who's now attempting to double down on that ridiculous, erroneous notion of a war on poverty, where the federal government would be turned to in order to combat poverty, he was very upset when he was having to be asked about Trump shenanigans. He kind of told the person that he was standing there at the podium with, "See, I told you they'd ask this," and he was unable to get away from Trump. You see, Trump is the albatross that is going to sink the gutless opposition party. It's good in so much as it will be taking out the top wing of the gutless opposition party, but if we're not careful, it's going to take out the conservative movement in entirety. This is why I have warned, much as Thomas Sowell has warned, that Trump is the Herbert Hoover of the modern era. He will be that catalyst that will be attempting to destroy the conservative movement, to make it go dormant for some 40 plus years that it did after Calvin Coolidge because of Herbert Hoover. Herbert Hoover was a disaster. And Donald J. Trump is a progressive businessman outsider, and he is the first that we've had of that caliber since Herbert Hoover. See, if we do not learn from the lessons of the past, then we're doomed to repeat their mistakes. And I don't want to see that for our country, because we simply cannot afford it. Not in this time when the United States of America, thanks in no small part to the twisted machinations of this disastrous Barack Hussein Obama regime, is caught up not only in an identity crisis, but a slew of constitutional crises. We cannot afford to allow a principled movement based on constitutional compositionalism to fall by the wayside. We must stand together, shoulder to shoulder, in solidarity and unity to let those forces know that they cannot tear down our country. They cannot take away our fundamental and inalienable rights. Those things and our rule of law are not up for negotiation. Unlike what Trump says, not everything is negotiable. Those things are non-negotiable. And any type of negotiation towards that should be dead on arrival, and it should prompt each and every one of us in our capacity as popular sovereigns to resist it with every grain and fiber in our being.
Sure. Well, I cannot repeat this enough. I cannot emphasize this enough. Without our shared Constitution, we have nothing. And see, this is why another key part of the constitutional composition movement is 6-2 or fight. You know, and we've explained what that was. We've explained it on Twitter. We've explained it on Facebook and other social media. We've explained it here on the show. And I think it bears worth repeating. 6-2 or fight is directly correlated to the Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution, Article 6, Clause 2. Because with it being the Supremacy Clause, it is emphatic and concrete that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and all laws and treaties which are made or which shall be made must be done in pursuance, meaning that they have to follow the Constitution. They cannot violate our rights. So if we are to maintain our rights, we have to look first and foremost what the core institution of those rights is, and that's the supremacy of our laws. That is the supreme law of the land. And without that, we have no rights. We have no reason to even maintain them. We have no obligation or even impetus of living as free, sovereign citizens. So again, it's 6-2 or fight. That's what it comes down to.
And of course, what makes Donald Trump so dangerous, going back to the Judge Curiel thing, that is really beginning to be a thorn in his side, is that he is essentially trying to intimidate the judge, to say that he would go after him civilly because he's being unfair to Trump, that he's a hater of Trump. Yeah, good luck, because judges have immunity. So I don't even know why he's bringing that up, other than to once again fully display to the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media that he thinks he's above the law. that he doesn't want to have the law apply to him. That is ridiculous. That is going to be detrimental to each and every one of us. It is going to have far-reaching impacts for this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours, and we cannot allow him to get away with that. Again, this is why the whole notion of equal protection under the law, why that old adage that the United States of America is a nation of laws and not of men carries such importance here. Because when you stop and think about it, that talks about equal opportunity and equal application of law. And not equal outcomes, because not everyone is going to be the same. That's the fundamental flaw of the Fabian Socialists. But Trump, much like Hillary Clinton, is trying to push this line of view that he is something better. He is somehow superior. Why? Because he has smally hands, or he built a tower? I don't know. All I know is that this is his line of thinking, and it really has no place in an open and honest society like that of the United States. If we are not careful, he is going to push towards this untenable, unacceptable position of where he becomes a Trump-talitarian. Well, I don't want a Trump-talitarian. I don't want a Trump-tower-tarian. I don't want a commander-in-chief. I don't want a chief-in-chief. I want a statesman, and I want us to go back to strict adherence to the fundamental tenets contained in the four corners and the concise and clear language of our Constitution. It's why we've always said that the Constitution is the key. That is how we will get our nation back to the path of prosperity. Stop looking for messianic figures to come down from providence above to save you. If you want to see a savior of this country, might I suggest you look in a mirror?
I have to say this, and I have to point this out. And you just reminded me of this when, just like all Fabians, they want to lump everybody together and have this utopian or Trumptopian now scheme of, well, everybody's to be treated equal. It's all fairness and equality and blah, blah, all this other nonsense. See, he's been doing this the whole time. And what people don't understand is what he's trying to do is he did it when he says we're going to start winning again. We're going to be winners. We're going to do this. He's generalizing everybody and lumping everybody together in order to get the whole consensus of a crowd. And then when you get that consensus of the crowd, you keep feeding that to them incrementally. And that's what he was doing. In fact, he did it not once, but twice that I can recall, with having everybody at the rally raise their hand and take an oath to support him, swear allegiance to him.
There's only one thing that we swear allegiance to in the United States, and that's the Constitution.
Our Constitution. Yes.
But we see that there are so many people, far too many people, who have started to go down this line that the Constitution hasn't been doing enough to protect them, that it hasn't been doing enough to shield them, and therefore it is somehow now quaint or antiquated or unapplicable in this modern, fast-paced society. Nothing could be further from the truth, folks. As Jeremy said earlier, without the Constitution, we have nothing, because it is what safeguards our rights. But you've got to recall that there is this symbiotic relationship that exists with it, to where in order for it to protect us, we have to proactively maintain and safeguard it. And we see that for the past century and a half now, the Fabian Socialists have been doing everything in their power to tear this nation apart at the seams, to try and get away from this constitutionally endowed representative republic of ours based on our fundamental and inalienable rights and the natural law tenets that underpin everything that is of value, significance, and importance here. And we just can't ignore that. Yet the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media are attempting to do just that.
You know what I see when I hear people say, well, the Constitution's an antiquated document. Oh, it's a living document. It doesn't mean now what it meant 230 years ago. Blah, blah, blah. You know what strikes me when I hear individuals say that is it's no longer applicable to them because they don't have the fortitude, they don't have the ambition, they don't have the willingness and the responsibility to maintain it. They don't want that burden, so to speak, because they look at it as a burden. To me, I look at it as a gift. It's like waking up every morning and being able to draw a breath and open my eyes. They don't view it as that. That's not what their lives revolve around anymore. Their lives revolve around standing real close to a microwave oven, trying to figure out how in the blue hell they're going to eat, because if they don't have power and they can't push that button on that microwave, they're going to starve. They freak out. They have no modicum of sensibility anymore when it comes to self-preservation. A lot of people want to look at these reality shows on TV, and this is a prime example. You have all these shows on TV, and I'll watch them, but I watch them for amusement because I laugh at some of these individuals. I'm a survivalist. I'm going out and I'm going to do this. I'm going to stay at this remote part of the world that's tough terrain, and I'm going to survive for 7 days. That's all fine and well. It's fun. To me, it would be an adventure. I would enjoy doing that. But they want to try and transpose that into their life, but they have no idea how any of that stuff is done. They don't even understand where to begin, and it all begins with being able to understand why you're alive and have the freedom to do what you do to begin with.
Well, it's like how Trump has that shallow, hollow, meaningless, and empty platitude that forms his campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again." Mm-hmm. First of all, that presupposes that America ever stopped being great. And, of course, we, on past episodes, have emphatically denied that America has ever ceased being great. But let's just, again, for argument's sake, say that it did stop being great. Mm-hmm. How do you make it great again if you don't know what made it great in the first place? And that goes to another contention that has been made in the salivating mainstream media that I find rather laughable. They try and say that what Trump is doing is creating a new nationalist movement. Even some of the Lion Trump-vidians have tried to shroud themselves in this mantle of nationalism. But if you don't believe in the Constitution, and if you find no value in the Constitution, how can you claim to be a nationalist when that is what defines our national identity? When that defines what the United States is as both a nation and a people? You see, there's the problem, right there. It's not based in reality. It's not based in the natural law. It's not based in anything that has made this nation great in our relatively brief yet illustrious history. And of course, Trump doesn't want to go into that, and the Lion Trump-vidians don't want to go into that because it challenges everything that they're claiming to be the truth. And you see, their truth is not truth. It is not reality. It is some twisted Fabian socialist agenda, because populism is just a thinly veiled disguise of progressivism, which is just a thinly veiled disguise of Fabian socialism. This is all tied into something wicked, even from Scripture, when we recall that in 19th century Great Britain, or England, the Fabian socialist's first iconography was that of a wolf in sheep's clothing, which was the adequate description of how Satan would infiltrate God's creation. Well, there we are. That's what we see. That is what we are facing right here, right now, in the present, as we speak into our microphones. So how do we overcome it? Again, the key is within the Constitution. It has been with us since the inception of this nation some 235 years ago.
I want to point out as well that when you talk about the nationalism, he talks about creating this nationalist society, a new nationalism, and this and that. What he's talking about doing is not the right type of nationalism that we, the people, draw our desire and purpose of remaining a free and sovereign nation as. What he's talking about is the exact kind of nationalism that was instituted in Nazi Germany. Remember that Nazis is an acronym for National Socialist German Workers' Party. Didn't Trump make mention of something of the American Workers' Party?
He wants to transform the GOP into a workers' party.
Which is akin, again, to Fabian socialists. Mm-hmm. It's the whole thing. And again, he's not bashful about hiding this. He puts it right out in plain sight. Why? Because that's the last place anybody's going to look. Remember, folks, we've mentioned this before. He is full of double entendres. He says all these things to make people, happy and giddy and make them feel like there's some kind of special quaff flake, an individual quaff flake that has been sprinkled.
Bad dandruff.
Yeah. But at the same time, he's pretty much telling them, this is what I'm going to make you believe. And then when you buy into it, this is what I'm really going to do.
Much like what Hitler did with Mein Kampf.
Yes.
Much like what Hitler did with Mein Kampf, and nobody listened.
Absolutely. And if you look at the mannerisms of Trump, and if you look at the video of Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini and Mao, all these individuals that have gave grandstand speeches, their body language is the same, their mannerisms are the same, the double speak and the double message that is sent out is identical. It really is. Trump is doing nothing more than plagiarizing these speeches. When he says, remember, Randy, when he said that the role of the government is to provide education, housing, and health care. Mm-hmm. Well, let's go back to the Enabling Act speech of 1933. It's all in there. It is all in there. He calls
it's like
for
how there was this written letter from a person who didn't support Hitler, and the letter started out, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it in front of me, but it basically said, I detested the man from the very beginning because he spoke in vulgar language and spoke to political generalizations without providing any information beyond that other than spewing hatred and division. Mm-hmm. Does that not sound familiar?
Well, again, remember Trump at his rallies. It used to be these people would be carried out on stretchers. You see these people throwing a tomato, punch them in the face. I'll pay your legal fees. I promise. We're going to do this. I can tell you, I guarantee, we have the bigliest people and the bestliest people, and we'll do... He cannot even define what he means by any of this. He hasn't spoken anything about where he stands on principles at all. He doesn't have any principles, and if he does, I'd like somebody to point out where they are rooted in the Constitution, and I'll give you a hint, Article Non-Section Existent Clause 0, because they're not there. But if you want to look at his principles that people think are constitutional and conservative principles and Republican principles, remember, he even said, this is not a Republican thing to say, but national health care is a good thing. We need single payer. We need it, the government is going to, we need to provide health care for everybody. And who's going to pay for it, Mr. Trump? Oh, the government's going to pay for it. Really? Since when is it the government's job to take care of we the people? As far as I'm concerned, if memory recalls, they work for us. It's not their job to take care of us. That would be like a business owner hiring a whole bunch of people and say, okay, your whole job is to make sure that I'm fat and happy and I'm taken care of. I'm not going to do any work. I'm not going to do anything. You're going to make me all the money. You're going to create all these things for me, and you're going to take care of me. That's what the employers, i.e. we the people, have become.
Well, it's because all of these revisionists have stepped in and have changed who we are as a nation and a people. They have been pushing for this redefinition of the United States of America. It's like I said with that one college professor I had who tried to say that George Washington was essentially illiterate. Of course, when I brought up all of the things that he wrote during the French and Indian War for his memoirs and for his communiques and asked the professor who wrote them, the professor had no idea. Mm-hmm. Here was a professor with a PhD in history who had no idea who wrote those letters, and when I told him it was George Washington, he kind of sank back in his chair, and I said, is there any more falsehoods that you wish to share with the class?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And see, that's another thing, Randy. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners have probably engaged stuff like this with going through their collegiate and academic career. It's taboo now to challenge your professors in college. In fact, as you recall, it was about a year ago, I challenged one of my professors numerous times, and I was put through the ringer. I was accused of plagiarism, which turned
Right.
out to be absolute nonsense, which she apologized for because she had no choice. Because she did not like the paper that I wrote because it went against everything that she was trying to indoctrinate the class on, and every single class session she would push this Obamacare, this ACA. Well, everybody in the class had to do a paper on that, and when I did mine, it was what? Well, Randy, you've read it. When I did it, it was nothing but facts and truth, and relegated and rooted in the law and the Constitution.
Yep.
So it again, it's become taboo to challenge your profession. You know what? I'd love people to challenge me. I love people to question things that I say. This is, folks, this is why we tell you, don't just believe what we say. You can trust what we say if you want, but verify it. Look it up. We're simply giving you the information. Why? Because if we give you the information and you look it up and you follow through with it and research it, that's where the empowerment comes, because knowledge is power. When you see it for yourself and you can verify it, then it becomes knowledge. It doesn't just become hearsay from us or platitudes from us, as people would label them.
Yeah, it's about self-empowerment. We
Yes.
want you to be empowered. Because when you're empowered, that means that you are acting on your civic duties and obligations and responsibilities, just as each and every one of us is expected to do so. That's the great thing about what our founding fathers handed us. And it's why it's such a travesty to see that the United States of America and the current status quo in this once thriving and flourishing republic of ours is so far detached from what they gave us. It's as though there are so many within our community of popular sovereigns who are afraid to think for themselves, who are afraid to find the truth for themselves. We don't want you to live in fear. We want you to be empowered to say no, to live as free as we were meant to be. Unfortunately, that becomes all the more difficult when the party that is supposed to be about the original founding principles of this country has all but abandoned. Well, no, hell, they've abandoned completely those fundamental and inalienable rights that were endowed to us by our Creator, the fundamental truths that compose this nation of ours. And that is so troubling because it shows that there is this lack of conviction, that people are willing to believe anything, that they are willing to sell their most essential liberties for a fleeting and false sense of security. And we deserve neither, and shall surely have neither, if that is the case. And that's certainly what Benjamin Franklin said. That's where I get that quote from. And, of course, it's like he also said that we have given you a republic if you can keep it. Well, that means that we have to be proactive. That means that we have to actually go out, be the virtuous popular sovereigns that we're called on to be, and to defend our rights. And it's getting exceedingly difficult to do that in modern America, because we've now see that there's this effort to pass an association of guilt before a trial has been commenced, before anything has been convinced. And therefore, it's just easier to silence people that way. That's why the Fabian socialists have done that. That's why you have this victim mentality, this victim mindset that is causing even the up-and-coming generations to seek safe places in college because they're afraid of free speech. How come you're afraid of speech? Stop. The best way to combat speech is to speak.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's kind of like a little paradox, but not. See, they're so afraid of free speech, but they have no problem telling people they're afraid of it, or utilizing their free speech that they're so vehemently opposed to, in order to say, "Oh, we need a safe place." Remember Jessica Jin?
Yep.
The individual down in Texas, I believe it was at Texas A&M Austin, that had this whole rally against, oh, we don't want firearms on campus, so what we're going to do is we're going to show up, we're going to be armed with a bunch of rubber phallics. Really? Really? So you're going to walk around with a bunch of rubberized sex toys and have them in holsters and other places to portray that, to mimic somebody carrying a firearm? But you're okay with that. You have the right to say that, and to do those things, but people don't have the right to exercise the rights that are actually enumerated in the Constitution? See, this is what Jessica Jin fails to understand and realize and grasp. Her rights end where others begin. And even more so, she fails to grasp that you and I and our first Air Marshal, Nelson Ward, and I'm willing to bet many of our cherished passengers, first-class passengers, would be one of the first individuals to step up should anybody try to infringe upon their right to peaceably assemble and speak freely.
Mm-hmm. It falls upon our shoulders to defend these rights, to advocate and exercise these rights. You see, you should never be made afraid to exercise your rights. But you see, that's what Trump is trying to do. Trump is trying to silence free speech. He's trying to use the tactics of bullying and intimidation to silence critics. That is what a totalitarian does. That is what all of these tin-pot dictators within the history of the course of human events have done. It's because they realize that their ideology, their plans, their twisted machinations would never be accepted in the marketplace of ideas, because it is diametrically opposed to what a free-thinking individual would do, or what a free society would do. They loathe and despise that freedom because that means we have the freedom to say no, to reject them. And that certainly, if we are going to be a free society still, and remain so for posterity, we need to say no to Hillary, of course. But we need to say no to Donald J. Trump as well. They are as much a threat as the other is to our entire representative Republican form of government. And that's what we've been warning about here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, for all these months now, going back to our first episode. And we warn of this because we want you to stay free. And we want to stay free. And we want the United States of America to be the robust representative republic that it was always intended to be ever since its inception some 235 years ago. This isn't rocket surgery, folks. You don't need Dr. Ben I'm a Victim Carson to get this working. We can certainly put him on the lunar base so that he can go operate on the lunatics, but as for everyone else, he just needs to go away. And he needs to take that raving lunatic that's his good buddy now, Donaldoff, the Don Trumpolini, the mafioso quafioso with him. And he can take the whole Waffle House gang with him.
It has become beyond clear that when you mention the whole labeling thing, and the silencing of free speech against Trump. See, this is to be expected. This has always happened in every single political arena. There's always individuals on the opposition, on both sides. You have individuals that are Republicans that have showed up and protested Hillary, or the opposition, Republicans opposing Democrats. It's always happened. And vice versa, Democrats have always showed up to protest Republicans. But when you have a third group of individuals that are staunchly opposed to both, one or the other, or both of them, of the opposition, they kind of want to focus everything towards that third group of individuals. See, with all the Trump protesters, the Trump campaign is using these individuals that have showed up and disrupted. And yes, there are individuals that have shown up, caused problems to chaos. And are they exercising their First Amendment rights? Yes. But when they become combative, when they start breaking the law because they're protesting Trump, absolutely break out the water hoses and water cannons and, corral them and stop them. But here's the problem. Those select few individuals have now created a name that is being attached to other individuals who are not unruly, who are simply peaceably assembling, because now Trump has said, oh, well, these individuals show up to protest us or whatever, you have to do this, this, and he is taking these individuals that are bad, that want to exercise their rights to the certain extent of going above and beyond that and infringing upon other rights, and attach that to everybody that is against him. And Hillary Clinton does the same thing. So does Bernie Sanders. That, again, is nothing more than propaganda. It's straight out of Goebbels. It is the labeling issue. So you and I, we don't advocate violence against Trump. We don't advocate violence against his supporters. We don't advocate violence against Hillary Clinton or any of the candidates or any of their supporters. But yet, you and I have been attacked. We've been labeled as, well, you're not voting for Trump. You've got to be a Hillary Clinton supporter, and you're un-American. And I don't want to hear that, my service to this country is a tarnishment of my oath because I support Trump, even though he doesn't know what the Constitution is. But that's what I took an oath for. See, they're mesmerized by this whole quaffunism mentality. They start believing the labels actually apply to everybody as a whole.
It's a quaffacopia of quaff sense.
Yes, and again, this goes all the way back to what we were saying at the onset of the show, that putting everybody together, telling everybody we're all going to win, we're going to win big, we're going to do this, labeling individuals as a whole in order to unify them, and then taking that label, just like the Fabians always do. Again, they hijacked the term progressive, they hijacked the term liberal, they hijacked the term gay, and now all of a sudden, when it doesn't fit their narrative, or when they see that it can be used for detrimental purposes to advance their agenda, they'll flip it on its head and use it to attack somebody else and label somebody else. And that's exactly what's happening.
Of course. And you see, that's what Trump's trying to do here. He's trying to recreate this whole Vulgarian movement. Mm-hmm. He's trying to make it acceptable to attack anybody for everything, but as soon as it goes against him, he starts whining the loudest. Folks, that's the actions of a schoolyard bully. That's what Trump is. Trump is repeating all of these things, is going out and, committing all of these atrocious acts, saying all of these atrocious things, because he wants to label the Republican Party. Again, it's why he said that it's the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party, and I don't want unity for the whole party. Well, folks, that's what it comes down to. And now that those who have endorsed him are trying to walk this back, be it Benedict Arnold Paul Ryan, be it Newt Big Government Gingrich, be it Dr. Ben, I'm a rocket surgeon victim Carson, be it Laura Ingraham or Sean Hannity,
Guilfoyle,
or Kimberly Gil La Rosafoyle. It's just, it's insanity.
Yeah, and it also speaks volumes to the actions of individuals like Pamela Bondi and Greg Abbott.
Yeah,
with the whole Trump University thing. There was the issue of some Trump dealings down in Florida where there was a lawsuit and this and that. She was doing investigations, and lo and behold, the investigation stopped. The lawsuits were dropped, but yet she, I think, what was it, $25,000 towards her campaign to run for Attorney General?
And then $35,000 towards
for Greg Abbott. Wasn't it?
Yeah, $35,000 for Greg Abbott. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they're on the right track, and then all of a sudden, boom, they get derailed.
Now, what Abbott's spokesperson came out and said is he had no impetus on the decision not to prosecute, and that they did a good job protecting Texas because Trump University was pushed out of the state. It was pushed out of the state, but the criminal charges should have gone forward. There was enough evidence there to form a prima facie fraud case. And so what we see is it doesn't matter whether it was Abbott that made that decision or not. As much as I disliked Harry Truman, he did have that placard on his desk that I think is so important for anyone who holds an office. The buck stops here. I have to take accountability for my underlings, for my henchmen, for my minions, for my employees. If I don't, then what good am I doing? How can I represent the people if my people can't even represent me? And of course, that's what we've seen occur all throughout this Barack Hussein Obama regime in these disastrous 2 terms of it. President Peel and Squeal, the Chiquita-in-Chief himself, has gone out there and said, well, I didn't know about that. I read about that in the newspaper, just like everybody else. I'm Barack Hussein Obama. I got a phone and I shove it up my posterior and I don't give a damn about anything else.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't do us any good.
No. And we have to look at these individuals that, like you said, are walking this back. Well, this is that, like Newt said, that was probably the dumbest thing he's ever done politically.
Well, Newt's dumbest thing to ever do politically was to endorse Trump.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, aside from trying to, take full credit for the whole, what was it that, back in the, when he was Speaker of the House.
Yeah.
The NAFTA or whatever it was, the free trade agreement stuff. But it when these individuals start walking this back, it's like, no, you have no credibility anymore. You have no credibility. When you throw your full weight and support behind an individual and you come out and say, well, it's obvious he's the best person for the job because he does have all the delegates and blah, blah. So what? So what? So let's see here. Let's say you're the coach of a football team and maybe you have a side hobby of selling skin lotion, care products, and stuff like that. But if you're a coach of a football team and your quarterback has a rocket for an arm, will be able to throw a touchdown pass any given point in time, you tell him where to put the ball, and it goes there. That's like saying, well, our water boy's been a water boy for 25 years. He's got more experience, being part of the team than our rookie quarterback. So we're just going to throw him in there and, hey, everybody's going to rally behind him because it's the water boy and he's going to get their support, and it's fun to see the water boy play, even though he doesn't really have any experience doing these things. And then you put him in there, give him the ball, and guess what happens? He's going to get sacked. His face is going to get shoved in the mud and into the turf. And you're going to have the biggest linebackers just trample over him, cause a fumble. They're going to pick up the ball, and they're going to run the other way, and they're going to score the winning touchdown or even advance their lead. You have to be able to be smart. Sometimes the best offense is a good defense, yes. But sometimes you just have to have the best offense, period. If your best offense can defeat the defense, guess what? That means that you're going to win every single time. When the GOP decided to put up the embarrassment of the Waterboy Quaff Waffler to throw a winning touchdown pass because, hurrah, hurrah for the team, let's do it, we can win. Wrong.
Yeah,
because
how is
you might think
of the minority and a tyranny of a false unity really going to make this country any better? How is that going to really propel us to a better position? The fact of the matter is it's not going to. All of this is working against our best interests, and all of this is working against the stability of this once thriving society of ours. And that's the thing. There's no longer this acceptance of a greater good in the United States. It's all about me, I. And that's the same thing with Trump. I think that's why he's had all of this attraction. It's, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, it's all me, look at my perfect hair forever, I built a tower, I got smally hands, but a bigly brain. Yeah. None of it applies.
And people want to look at this and say, oh, well, Trump won all these states. Trump won all the delegates. Trump's going to win the general election.
Except he got rid of all of his logistical things there, all of his framework there. He's fired them all.
Right. And here's the thing. People are again, lulled into this false perception of, winning. They bought into it hook, line, and sinker from the carnival barker himself. You can win like me. You can be like me. I'll teach you how to have bigly brains and smally hands and blah, 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 blah. Here's the thing. When you try to emulate somebody that should not be emulated, should not be personified, so to speak, or imitated in any way, shape, or form, that individual, yes, that person wins. See, Trump may win, but guess what? Everybody else loses. Mm-hmm. Now, again, the United States of America, we the people, I think of us as, well, probably the best damn team in the whole entire world. We have the best military, or at least on paper we do. Not so much anymore because, they've been shackled, so to speak. And Trump, I'll bring it back. No, you won't. No, you won't. You know what he would use our military for? To secure his properties in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's what he would use them for. He would use them as jackbooted thugs, just like Hitler used the Gestapo to secure his holdings. That's exactly what he would do. And again, who wins in that scenario? Not we the people, because it's not our interest that is being catered to. It is not our interest that is kept in mind. It is his. Again, this is all about him. And if, in order for him to make himself raised up to the highest level that he wants to be at, if it means completely destroying the sovereignty of the United States by divisiveness, pitting individuals against each other, brother against brother, family member against family member, friend against friend, if that's what it takes for him to escalate himself, he'll do it. Remember, he's even said it himself. I will back away from anything if it looks like I'm going to lose, that I can't win. If it looks like I'm going to lose. If I'm going to take a loss, I'll back away.
Does that mean he's going to back out of the general election? Does that mean that he's going to back out now? No, of course not.
You know why?
Because his goal there is to defeat the American people, so it's a win-win.
Absolutely. His goal, by defeating the American people, is to set the stage for Hillary to be elected, in which she's going to be elected, folks. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I know, just like many of our listeners, I'm praying for the sweet meteor of death. I might even write that in on the ticket, because at least we have a better chance of surviving that than we do with either Trump or Hillary in office. But see, it's a win-win for Trump. It's a win for him in two ways, because A, he gets to destroy the American people, which will allow him to... I mean, look at how much money he's already made. Look at how much money he's already made. People say, oh, he's not taking campaign contributions from anybody. Wrong. Remember George Soros, a.k.a. Gorgie Schwartz? Yeah, the Nazi sympathizer and narc? That's what he was. He took money from him. He has business dealings. He is still doing business with George Soros. Okay? But see, here's the thing. Look at all of Trump's product lines and businesses that he's done. Hair care products. Miss America. All the royalties that he's made off The Apprentice. All the royalties he's made off anything he's ever been on TV. All that money is his. That's all he cares about. And the more he gets people to flock to his, spiel, and when he's, mesmerizing them with the special little snowflakes that flutter about from his coif and his unsightly skunk pelt, the more people are going to buy stuff from him. So he's winning there. Remember, he wants to win. And then if Hillary gets elected, he's going to say, hey, I told everybody this and that, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to run again. I don't know, maybe. It just won't be the Republican thing to do. Well, whatever. When this country fails, he's going to swoop in, and he's going to pick up all the pieces, and he's going to collect up everybody's debts. He's going to buy up people's property. He's going to use eminent domain. Why? Because his best friend Hillary Clinton is going to be there. to put people on the Supreme Court that are going to solidify his abuse of eminent domain. He's setting himself up for future gains. He doesn't care about this country. It's the same thing. In fact, you know what? You know where he learned how to do this from? George Soros. Because George Soros did the exact same thing in Europe. He caused their currency to collapse, and then he moved in, bought up a whole bunch of debt and everything, then turned around and flipped it. George Soros is also partly responsible for the gold issue with the gold tanking back in the 80s. Remember when gold went way down in the 80s? He was part of all of that. It was all part of the speculation. He created all this nonsense of speculation to where it went down. He moved in, bought up a whole bunch of it, and then inflated the price and capitalized on it. That's what Trump is doing. Trump is using we the people and his supporters as speculative blue chips in order to drive down the price, i.e. the integrity and the sovereignty of the American people, to where it goes to an all-time low, and then he's going to buy into all that stuff, clean it all up, and then profit
for a windfall.
From it.
It's all about his own windfall. Yes. And, of course, it's always like that with Trump. Trump doesn't give a damn about the people. He never has. And he learned that from his daddy. His daddy was all about exploiting people and being just all sorts of terrible things with respect to the housing developments that he had in Brooklyn. And it goes to show that the apple doesn't rot very far from the tree. The apple just does not rot very far from the tree. Mr. Green
rots on the tree.
Well, yes. But Mr. Green, that's the same thing as John Barron. That's the same thing as John Miller. And, of course, Trump is going to do anything and everything that's in his best interest. And that means tearing this country apart because he can gain power from that. The only reason I see that he would want to win the presidency is so that he could amass greater power for himself, to use our resources to protect his interests elsewhere. And you see, that's what it comes down to. His whole impetus, his whole driving force in that book of his The Art of the Squeal was to use other people's money to build up his thing, whether it kills the other people, the other investors, or not. Well, that's a shyster move. That's what you would expect from someone who is a seedy business person. Well, that's what Trump is. His great-grandfather was or actually not his great-grandfather, just his grandfather was a pimp, was a speculator, was a thief, was a draft dodger, and we see that too was an influence on Trump's life. He too is a draft dodger. He runs all of these escort services. He has been a bit of a pimp himself, and he's certainly pimping the Republican Party now.
Yeah. And this is what people don't understand is pimps are probably the one of the biggest embarrassments to ever crawl on the face of the earth. You know? Yeah. It's funny. It reminds me, Randy, it reminds me of a YouTube video I watched where this guy was being solicited by a couple of prostitutes, and he kept pushing them away, this and that, and then their pimp showed up and says, "Hey, what's the problem? Are they too, expensive for you? They're not good enough for you? What's the issue with this?" And he wanted to start a fight with this guy. Little did he know the guy was a martial arts expert, and the guy just kicked the living crap out of him. It's just, and then the prostitutes started coming to it and doing this and that and everything. It was just a whole mess. But that's had to be such an embarrassment for that pimp. It just absolutely had to be that much of an embarrassment. I mean, if you're going to run a business like this, a so-called business like that, then engaging in nefarious activities, you have to be able to accept the responsibilities for that. Trump, again, has dealings with that, with his TrumpEscorts.com, his grandfather pimping individuals, having brothels, to basically steal the findings of the prospectors in the gold rush, his father with pimping tenants, so to speak, lording over being a slumlord. A slumlord is nothing more than a pimp, essentially. That's all it is. He's putting individuals into a situation where they have no choice because that's the only place they can afford, but they can't even afford it, so he keeps jacking up the rent and bilking them for all this money. Well, that's what prostitutes are. That's what happens to prostitutes. It's a form of slavery. And that's all Donald Trump is. He's an aggrandized slave master. Is all he is. Remember, I mentioned earlier, when he pointed out my African American over there, he's putting this right out in front of everybody to see it, and people are so blinded by rage and their disdain for career politicians. You know what? We don't like career politicians either. People like John McCain should have been out of office years ago. Years ago. I want, like you said, Randy, I too want people who are statesmen. I want them to go there, serve their term,
and get out.
Follow the Constitution, and get out.
Yeah.
I can't remember the individual that had the good graces to do the patriotic thing of serving one term, not even a full term, but dying in office.
James K. Oh, no, not dying in office. He died after. But James K. Polk was one.
Yeah, James K. Polk was one. And if he came there, came into power, was elected president, followed the Constitution, enforced the Constitution, and had the good graces and the honor and dignity to die afterwards.
So that he couldn't screw up his legacy.
Exactly.
I mean, you can't ask for more than that.
No.
But we see that what is happening in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours is that we are getting away from the Constitution. And Donald Trump is certainly not going to be the answer for that. He is not going to draw us back to the Constitution. He is not going to restore honor to the American people and to our system of polity. He is going to continue this nefarious little catwalk that we've seen for generation after generation, and that is going to bring more besmirchment, more tarnishment to our reputation, both as a nation and a people. We can ill afford to continue down this path, yet Donald Trump is going to accelerate the death spin and spiral that's already affecting the United States. And again, he is going to have a complicit ally in the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media. Do not think that their attempts to turn on him was not something he didn't expect. He expected this from the get-go. He has been a master of manipulating them, but they couldn't be manipulated unless they wanted to be. And you see, that's what Trump has been doing. He has been working to manipulate them. He has been working to create this narrative, but that narrative is going to lose its effectiveness once they get the Fabian socialists chosen for the other side. Now, it is interesting to note that the Democrats are having their own version of a tyranny of false unity right now. Vermont Senator Noidface Boynme Sanders is refusing to step down, and there are already calls for him to do so that they can support Senator Clinton. Well, I'm sorry. I have to say right now that it doesn't matter who they run on that side. They are always going to be strict advocates for the Fabian socialist message. They are not going to back down from that message, and therefore they are still going to be the known threat. It doesn't matter whether it's Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton. And for that matter, it doesn't matter whether it's Donald J. Trump. Each and every one of them will be a continuation of the disastrous policies of this Barack Hussein Obama regime. And we need to get away from that. We need to get back to strict adherence to the fundamental tenets contained within the clear and concise language that composes the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. It really is that simple. And the sooner that we get back to that, the better off we'll be both as a nation and a people. But there are far too many, even within the so-called ranks of the conservative movement, that are willing to sell out their principles, are willing to allow this embarrassment that is the quaff-waffling mafioso extraordinaire to tarnish the Republican Party. But where does that get us in the long run? How does that assist the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty in this country, we the people? The answer is it does not.
And the more we get away from that, and the more that people shirk that and push it aside, well, the harder it's going to be. Now, anything worth doing is worth doing right, as the adage goes, but anything worth doing must be difficult. Because that's what creates pride and ownership. That is what gives people a sense of accomplishment. You know, it reminds me of something that I saw before regarding, it was on social media. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was from a United States Marine. And he gave a speech, and I'm just going to sum it up here real quick and paraphrase it. But he says some of the most minuscule and mundane tasks that are accomplished every single day by individuals lead to other tasks and simple tasks. Eventually, each task gets greater and greater with having to be with difficulty. But you can't just jump into something as being difficult. You have to accomplish the smaller tasks first. And he equated that to making your bed. If you can accomplish the easiest thing, the simplest thing, the most mundane thing, as getting up in the morning, crawling out of bed, and actually making your bed, you automatically, subconsciously think to yourself, wow, I made my bed. It looks great. I'm happy with it. Let me tell you, I love it. It's a goodly bed.
Don't ruin the thing with Trumpisms.
But my point is, this is what the Trumpidians need to understand. You have to accomplish the little things in order to be able to take on and accomplish the bigger things. Okay? So, if a person is able to make their bed in the morning, and they take satisfaction in it, it gives them a sense of empowerment to where they automatically think, well, what's the next mundane task that I can do, which is a little bit harder than making my bed, but not so extravagant that I can't do it.
Shooting my neighbor. Wait, that's probably not it, but...
No. I was thinking more of along lines of cooking breakfast.
And then shooting the neighbor.
The point is, folks, and, you know, we're not trying to be difficult about this or, you know, humorous about this, but the point is, you have to be able to look at the small things in life, even though they may seem insignificant. It is those small things that will either make or break you. The United States Constitution may seem like a small thing. In writing, it is. It's maybe, what, 3 pages, 3.5 pages at most?
It's the shortest constitution in the world.
It's the shortest constitution, but it is the longest contiguous document of its kind in the history of this earth.
Mm-hmm.
Which means, again, this points back to the greatness of it. Those little things, they may seem small and insignificant. Again, they can make you or break you. It's the little things that kill if you don't know how to manage those little things. The Constitution is a short read. But you know what? The great challenging task is having a working and understanding knowledge of it. And the only way you'll be able to do that is if you take the opportunity of picking it up and reading it. And then as you read it, you ask questions about it. You find individuals like Randy and myself, our first Air Marshal Nelson Ward, ask us questions about it. Clarify things. We had an individual on Twitter, one of our followers, ask for clarification on what 6-2 or fight stands for. And when we gave the clarification, he says, oh, it makes perfect sense. It's great. It fits. I understand now. And it's little things like that where when people, again, you accomplish those little things, you take on those little mundane tasks, that's where your achievement and your empowerment and your knowledge, which equals power, comes from.
And that's exactly what we have always been about here on Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. We want you, our cherished listening passengers and audience members, to be empowered. We want you to be able to ingratiate your lives, to enrich yourselves, not just monetarily, but spiritually as well, and to be able to exercise that which forms the quintessential aspect of what it means to be an American citizen. You see, what's so great about the United States of America and the embodiment of this spirit in the Constitution is that the whole republic is greater than the sum of its parts. There is something greater about everything that we stand for and represent in this once thriving, flourishing, and vibrant representative republic of ours. And of course, the historical revisionists, the political correctness advocates, the moral relativists, the Fabian socialists of any ilk and flavor are going to be diametrically opposed to that. They realize that it is a dire threat to their attempts to completely, fundamentally, permanently, and irreparably redefine what it is to be an American citizen. That's why they want you to think we're a democracy and not a representative republic. That's why they want to get away from our traditions and our institutions and to pervert everything that we hold near and dear in this country. It, for them, is all about control. It has always been about control. But, folks, when you really pause for a moment and think about it, what matters and who is the one that is really supposed to have control? It is we the people. Because if you look at the opening lines to the preamble to our shared United States Constitution, you see that it states, we the people. We the people are the ones who ordained and established and proclaimed this great representative republic of ours. And that is another reason that these nefarious Fabian socialist types and these historical revisionists have gone and attempted to rewrite the illustrious, resplendent history of the United States of America. It's because they loathe and despise the idea and the very notion that we are a free people. They want to control every facet of our daily lives. And that's why Alexis Tocqueville said that they are New Age feudalists.
And my response to all of those individuals that want to open their gaping maws and shovel in spoonfuls of political correctness, revisionism, indoctrination, moral relativism, Fabianism, I have a very, very simple response for you. No. That's it. No. You do not have the right to force your crap on me. I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to tolerate you doing it to my fellow sovereign citizens. And you need to understand this perfectly clear. All of you nefarious individuals that would like to opine and who are listening into this, please feel free to regurgitate any of that nonsense by way of, the only way you know how, making death threats to us on our show's page or on Twitter, so on and so forth. That's fine. Do it. We support your right of free speech. But just make sure you understand and are willing to accept the consequences. Because, see, unlike the group known as Anonymous, who says, we are coming, we are already here.
We are waiting.
And I don't think it's going to bode well for individuals that want to take us up on this challenge. Mm-mm. And it's not really, it's not really a challenge. It is in certain aspects, but more so you need to look at it this way. Again, no, you are not going to do this. We are not going to allow you to do this. We forbid you to do this because your rights, again, end where ours begin. And your rights end where our sovereign citizens, fellow citizens' rights begin.
And isn't that the quintessential aspect of what it means to be an American citizen? And of course the answer to that is yes, because we have to stand up for the rights of our fellow citizens. That is exactly what the community of popular sovereigns is all about. It's why the preamble to the United States Constitution starts out with those timeless, immortal words of "we the people." Think of just how amazing it is and how revolutionary it was to say that popular sovereignty rests in the hands of the people instead of being condensed into the entity of a king or into the entities of a king and parliament. No, our founding fathers took it to the next most complete holistic view that has been the most open, honest, accurate, and truly benevolent forms of government ever, that of we the people, sovereignty being in the hands of the people. But as we further divorce ourselves from that, as we draw further distance away from that, that is when we begin to deprive ourselves of our true national heritage, character, spirit, and above all, identity. And of course, that's what they want to do with all of this balkanization that we have seen. And that's why Trump is playing to the lowest common denominator. That's why he's trying to drive us into the mud. Well, it simply isn't going to work, because we will always stand by the Constitution and the composition of the Constitution. That is why we are the constitutional compositionists. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. We promise you she will not embarrass you or we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. I'm pretty sure she won't embarrass Jeremy either unless she publishes some photographs of when he got tipsy and tried to get behind the wheel of the aircraft, but that's okay. As always, folks, I'm Randy Wright, and I've been your captain, and I've also been joined by Jeremy. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. On top of that, we invite you to leave any questions, comments, concerns you might have, either here on our YouTube page or our Google Plus page or our Facebook page. And in addition, we invite you to follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle at Radio Aviation EX. One more time, folks, that's at Radio Aviation EX, and there you will find our departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapenton, our Blogspot page, which features audio blogs, and also our Cafe Press account. Why don't you tell them about what you can find there?
Well, I guarantee you there's nothing embarrassing about the Cafe Press account, and it's wonderful novelties there. It's loads of great things there, folks. And I know we've mentioned them time and time again, but we're just going to keep doing it. Why? Because, well, it's the American way. It's we the people. It's something we can all share. Share it with your friends, have a, barbecue, a party, this or that, whatever the case is, whatever special occasion, you can actually retrofit it with drinking glasses with our logo on it, party favors, bumper stickers. Make great graduation gifts, and we know it's the graduation season, folks, so, spread the love around. Just spread it around. There's nothing embarrassing about spreading the love, folks. It really isn't. I don't care what the LGBT, STFU, WTF says. Yeah. I mean, hey, we know what love is, and again, we here at the Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, we love the Constitution. We love our fellow citizens.
The people of this nation.
We the people.
It really comes down to that. And with that said, folks, we'll see you next time. Do take care.